I never knew my lower back pain would kill my daughter. Hi, I'm Eric Herschel, and in the next 3 minutes I'm going to tell you my heartbreaking story about my daughter. If you suffer from chronic pain, pay close attention because it can happen to you and your loved ones too. And what's more important is that if you stay with me, you'll discover a simple yet scientifically proven breakthrough in pain elimination, developed by one of the world's most accomplished researchers in neurology. It's what I personally use to eliminate my pain permanently, and it alleviates even the worst cases of chronic pain. It can be used to eliminate virtually any pain-related condition, from neuropathy to back pain, arthritis to headaches, chest pain to fibromyalgia. Simply because, as amazing as this sounds, this breakthrough method tackles the root cause of all of them. The easy-to-follow, pain-erasing method that I'm about to give you doesn't require any medications, any expensive therapies, or any experimental procedures. It works for those who have been suffering from chronic pain for any length of time, no matter whether that's a year or 40 years. And if you start using it today, you'll be virtually pain-free within the next 21 days. This life-changing technique has been designed specifically for anyone who has ever felt as though they can't get out of bed, or who has trouble sitting in a chair for more than 30 minutes at a time, or who has been constantly crippled by pounding, unexplained headaches for years. And once you use it, you will never again suffer from the aches that seemingly strike you viciously and at random, and that seem to strike all over your body like multiple, constant bites from a snake. All it takes is 3 short weeks to systematically and completely drive all pain from your life, forever. And if that sounds unbelievable or like it's too good to be true, I completely understand. Which is why I'm going to provide you with all of the science, the research, and the proof behind the claims I've just made, and even show you exactly how the method works, right inside this video. Honestly, I was skeptical of all this at first myself, until I used this permanent pain elimination technique to banish my debilitating pain and give me my life back. Then saw more than 118,884 other Americans do the exact same thing to make even the worst cases of chronic pain disappear forever. People like Seth Ramey of Stillwater, Oklahoma, who writes, "I've been suffering from lower back pain for more than 15 years. For me, it was all about flare-ups. I'd feel fine for a while, sometimes even for several weeks. But then, out of nowhere, my back pain would flare up again. I'd seen specialists, tried prescription pills, and even undergone back surgery, but nothing seemed to make the pain go away. Which is why, 9 months ago, when I was in the middle of a horrible week-long bout of back pain, I decided to suspend my skepticism and try out the method you talk about for yourself. I couldn't believe the results. Within the first 3 days, my back pain was almost completely gone. But what's even more incredible is that in the last 9 months, it hasn't returned once. I firmly believe the pain elimination method you share inside your video has cured me of my back pain forever, and I highly recommend anyone who suffers from similar pain and discomfort to use it for themselves immediately. Those are just a few of the hundreds of emails and thank you letters I receive each day. And all it takes is the next 5 minutes of your time to start experiencing the same life-changing results for yourself. So turn the speaker volumes up, eliminate all distractions, and pay close attention while I tell you exactly how this method works, and why it will make all of your pain go away in a matter of days, even if every other therapy or medication you tried in the past has failed. Okay, so like I said, my name is Eric Herschel. I'm 61 years old and I've suffered from frequent bouts of chronic pain for more than 43 years. They started when I was in college, with just minor things like achy joints and mild back pain. Because these symptoms weren't all that severe at the time and I was young and fairly athletic, I figured they were just an offshoot of my active lifestyle. As the pain got both more severe and frequent with each passing year, however, I started to realize that these pain issues wouldn't disappear on their own. So I saw my first specialist when I was 35, and for the next 22 years, my life became a never-ending cycle of trying new medications, new experimental treatments, and new physical therapies, none of which ever did a single damn thing to make the pain go away. Now, if you're watching this video, I can only assume that you are just like me, one of the over 100 million Americans who suffer from some sort of debilitating chronic pain. And that, just like me, you know how incredibly frustrating living with chronic pain can be. You know what it's like to have your doctor do x-rays or MRIs or other tests that are unsuccessful at finding the source of your pain. You've probably tried dangerous and side effect-filled painkillers, both mild and severe, in an attempt to make the pain go away. And maybe you've even heard the most insulting and insensitive words that any doctor can say to a chronic pain patient. That's because he or she can't find the source of your pain. It's probably all in your head. At least I know that's what my experience had always been, even as I struggled more and more just to perform simple tasks like getting out of bed, walking around the house, or going out to the grocery store. And it all culminated with the most frustrating and humiliating day of my life, something that makes me feel weak, invalid, and worthless. and that more or less killed my only daughter. Now let me take a few seconds to explain what happened, because once you've heard this brief story, you'll fully understand why this was the trigger that made me snap, sending me on a year-long journey to find a cure to my chronic pain issues, and becoming secret test subject of one of the most well-renowned pain researchers in the world, which would ultimately lead to the discovery of the rapid pain elimination method that I'm going to tell you. The day that changed everything for me was June 3rd, 2012. That was the day of my only daughter's wedding, and family and friends from around the country had flown in to attend her special day. Like any father, I was incredibly excited and proud to see my daughter getting married, especially wanting to see my son-in-law to be was a good kid with a good head on his shoulders. But about 3 days before the wedding, my joy turned to horror as I was struck with one of the worst bouts of pain I'd ever experienced in my life. It was as if I'd been hit by a freight train. My whole body ached, especially my lower back. I could barely stand. I could barely lay down. The suffering was unbearable. And in a last-minute decision to make things easier, my wife and daughter decided to rent a wheelchair for me so they wouldn't have to stand in pain during the ceremony or reception. I hated the idea. It made me feel like I was an invalid or a cripple, or I don't know what exactly. Just not the kind of man I wanted to be. But the pain was so overwhelming, and standing for more than a minute or two was impossible, that I finally agreed. And on the day of the wedding, I could feel every single pair of eyes in that cathedral focused on me, as instead of walking my daughter down the aisle, I struggled to roll myself alongside of her. God, it was embarrassing. I even lost control and banged loudly on a church pew 2 different times, forcing my daughter to stop and help straighten my chair out. Little did I know, however, that what was going to happen at the wedding reception would be a million times worse. It all started out okay, me sitting at the table with my wife, watching the guests drink, eat, and socialize. But the trouble began when the wedding DJ forgot that he wanted to skip the father-daughter dance because I was too weak to do it. And suddenly the music stopped. The idiot DJ asked for everyone's attention, and then he asked for me and my daughter to join them on the dance floor. It was dead silent, and everyone was staring at us. My daughter stood in the middle of the dance floor looking confused and uncertain at being put on the spot and not knowing what to do. Suddenly, I was transported back in time, and she was once again the helpless, big-eyed little girl who'd always looked at me like I was some sort of hero, who had adored me, and who I had adored, and for whom I would have done anything in the world just to make happy. So I gathered my strength and my resolve, and I wheeled myself to the edge of the dance floor. I put my first foot and then my second foot on the floor, transferred the weight to my knees, and stood up. I took my first step, and then my second step towards her. And then, as a wave of pain surged through my body, my legs gave out, I let out a feeble scream, and I collapsed in a heap on the ground. As several guests ran out to help me, I looked up helplessly from the wooden floor, and what I saw broke my heart. My daughter was sobbing, tears streaming down her face and ruining her makeup. And even after I was helped back into my chair, and even as my wife had pushed me back to the elevator and up to our hotel room, all I could think of was that I'd ruined my only daughter's wedding, that I'd caused a scene, that everyone would always remember this horrible moments when they thought of her special day, and that it was all my fault. Well, that bout of severe pain lasted long after the wedding. I was taken to see 2 more specialists, and one said that the pain was all in my head, while the other tried to prescribe an extremely powerful prescription drug to me, which I declined because I was afraid of becoming a zombie or becoming addicted. Over the following month, as I lay in bed or on the sofa watching awful daytime TV shows, it felt like I'd become a prisoner in my own body. A man who'd been given a life sentence that was incredibly cruel and unusual, to be forced to suffer in agony until the day I died. And as the replay of my fall and my daughter's sobs ran through my mind again and again, I became determined to try anything and to do anything to cure myself from the pain I was suffering. From that moment on, I began spending every waking moment searching for a cure to my ongoing plague of agony. I don't know exactly what I was looking for even. I guess just some kind of idea about what could be causing it. For around 10 hours per day, I lay on my sofa or in bed and tore through every article, book, and study I could find about chronic pain. At first, the going was really slow. The biggest problem was that there are so many different ailments classified as chronic pain, and finding something describing my specific condition was in itself challenging. Lower back pain had long been a consistent trouble of mine, but then so had pain in joints all over my body, and even occasionally migraines. And the only ways to categorize my symptoms was with words like chronic pain or fibromyalgia, both of which are just catch-all terms for pain all over, not something that can be treated. It was incredibly frustrating, and after a month of research, without nothing to show, I thought to myself that maybe I was wasting my time, that maybe I should just accept that I was going to continue to live in pain forever, to accept both the pity and the sympathy of others. Maybe it was just a reality that I'd never be able to roll around on the floor, playing with my future grandchildren, or traveling anywhere outside of my city to visit family, friends, or go on vacation. So while I continued to search and research, I also began feeling more and more discouraged. Which is why when I stumbled upon a strange series of articles, buried deep in the archive of an academic research portal that I'd recently shelled out more than $699 to have access to, I nearly jumped off the couch in excitement. An expression, of course, as at this point jumping would have been extremely painful for me. The articles were written by an internationally celebrated neurological researcher named Kevin Klimar, and inside of them, he postulated a theory that I'd never heard of before, and that seemed really bizarre. You see, Klimar said that virtually all chronic pain conditions we experience, including fibromyalgia, arthritis, neuropathy, lower back pain, even irritable bowel syndrome, are really something called centralized pain, a condition that occurs in the brain. The reason that this is so important to understand, the scientist wrote, is that most people think that pain needs to come from a specific place in the body and be related to a physical problem like damaged nerves, tissue, or a lack of cartilage. That's definitely how most doctors treat your pain, and it's why they'll sometimes say it's in your head when they can't figure out where it's coming from, or a treatment doesn't work. But if that were the case, he asked, why is it that some days you experience more pain than on other days? Or that your pain feels like it's everywhere? Or why is it that the prescriptions, the injections, even massages you may get either don't work at all or only make you feel better for a few days max? In one of the articles, he even had a picture that I found absolutely incredible. It showed two side-by-side x-rays of the knees for two different people. The first kneecap had absolutely no cartilage whatsoever. The second looked completely healthy with lots of cartilage. And yet, according to the scientist in a study of thousands of people, 50% of people who had zero cartilage, nothing but bone on bone in the kneecaps, claimed they experienced zero pain on a daily basis, while 20% of people who had all of their cartilage in place and who appeared completely healthy were shown to suffer from excruciating osteoarthritis. Traditional medicine would say this simply doesn't make sense. How could someone not show any physical abnormalities and still experience such great pain? Well, the answer, Klimar argued, was that again, virtually every chronic pain condition you experience is not the result of damaged nerves, tissues, bones, joints, or cartilage, but that instead, it all has to do with your brain. At the bottom of the very last article, there was a small blurb that said, "For any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me," followed by his email address. I was pretty sure that email address was only supposed to be used by scientists and his other academic colleagues, but I was just too desperate to care. And so I immediately clicked the link and set to typing what ended up being a several-page-long email. In it, I told this expert researcher who I was and how much pain I'd been suffering from over the past few months, years, and decades. I mentioned the humiliating incident at my daughter's wedding, how I tried everything, and how I was spending 10 hours or more per day in a desperate search to get better. Then at the end, I included my phone number and asked if there was any chance we could set up a call so that I could pick his brain. Truthfully, I thought it was all sort of a long shot. This guy was pretty famous within the scientific community, and I couldn't believe he'd take the time to talk with some random person like me. Which is why, when my cell rang 2 days later, and the man on the other end introduced himself as Kevin Klimar, I nearly dropped the phone in excitement. After a few minutes of small talk, Kevin cut to the chase. He told me he was about to start testing an experimental new treatment protocol, something that he believed would naturally block the brain from feeling pain, and that should be able to stop the agonizing symptoms of nearly any chronic pain condition in existence. The reason he had called me, he said, was because my case sounded so incredibly severe, and I sounded so desperate, that it seemed like if this treatment worked for me, it would work for him. So the scientist asked if I would be his test subject, and I instantly agreed without a moment of hesitation. And less than 3 days later, there the man was, sitting next to my bed and taking all of my vital readings. Now, one thing about Klimar is that he's not the kind of guy who likes to waste time. Rather, he's an incredibly driven and passionate scientist, someone who is highly inquisitive, and who tends to get lost in his experiments and observations for hours at end. In fact, within 30 minutes of being at my house, he was already explaining the science behind his theory, what was going to be involved in testing it, and why he believed it would cure almost any case of chronic pain. The first thing you need to understand, he said, is that we all have nerve fibers in our bodies, and they are responsible for sending all sorts of feelings to your brain. Things like whether or not you feel heat, or cold, or pressure, or the rain on your skin, or most importantly, pain. You can think of the nerve fibers like the strings on a guitar. Based on where and how they are pressed, they'll sound different to your brain. For example, when it's hot out, the nerve fibers that are most sensitive to heat get pressed and you feel warm. When you stub your toe on the corner of a sofa, those fibers send pain signals up to your brain, which is a normal and healthy reaction. The problem with chronic pain conditions, however, is that those pain signals begin to get all out of whack. Your brain acts like an amplifier. It starts turning up the volume on your pain levels way too high, which means instead of only noticing pain when you are physically hurt, you suddenly begin to feel pain all of the time, even when you're just sitting in an office chair or on the sofa. That's why you'll get a flare-up randomly or feel pain in different places or all over. So in other words, what Kleimar was saying is that the cause for your pain issues, whether in the lower back, your joints, your chest, or even your headaches, is not because something has been damaged. Instead, the real issue is simply that your brain is amplifying the pain signals that are always inside of your body, and making them both awful and debilitating. If you want to test the validity of this theory, by the way, it's actually pretty easy to do so. Do you find that you're sometimes or always more sensitive to lights, or overly sensitive to sounds, or that you often feel hotter and colder than most people do? In all of these cases, it's because your brain is amplifying the signals from your nerve fibers. It's being overexcited. Well, these very same nerve fibers are what cause you to experience pain. So it should be pretty clear why, if your brain is over-amplifying the signals from those nerve fibers in other instances, it's doing the exact same thing when it comes to your pain. Now that explains the reason why, even though so many of us suffer from ongoing pain, we have trouble pointing to a single physical source of where the pain is being generated. But it also created a follow-up question, which was this: what causes our brain to amplify the pain volume in the first place? Well, that gets into the heart of both why Kleimar's cure for chronic pain works, why it has made it possible for more than 118,000 other Americans just like you to rapidly and immediately say goodbye to even their worst cases of chronic pain. Check this out. Numerous scientific studies have now shown that there are a group of key neurotransmitters that work together in your brain to create a microphone, which floods your brain with pain signals. These include a neuropeptide called substance P, an amino acid called glutamate, and several others. You can think of all these neurotransmitters as awfully rowdy neighbors inside your brain. They crank up the pain volume and they keep screaming and partying nonstop. Each of these neurotransmitters works differently, but the end result is the same. They overexcite the brain and force it to become abnormally sensitive to levels of pain. The fix for all of this, Kleimar believed, was to simply introduce some different chemical elements into your bloodstream. He said that extensive scientific research had already shown that each of these evil pain transmitters has an antidote, a naturally occurring chemical compound that will either regulate or eliminate them from your body. The nice part was that all of these chemical compounds were already contained in dozens of foods, oils, extracts, and supplements you could buy for $20 or less right at your grocery store. But the problem, he said, was that no one had ever tried to combine all of these different natural organic compounds into one total and complete pain solution, which meant he needed to start trying as many combinations of these different chemical compounds as he possibly could until he hopefully found one that worked. And that's where I came in. According to Kleimar, because my chronic pain was so well documented, so widespread, and so severe, he believed that if he could find the right formula, and it really did cause my pain to disappear, even if the results weren't immediate, it would provide the scientific validation that his theory really worked. In other words, if this thing could work for someone like me, a man who was bedridden, feeble, and who could barely walk to the bathroom on his own without collapsing in pain, then it could work for anyone. And so we went to work, with this brilliant scientist secretly experimenting on me. Over the following 2 months, Kevin Kleimar had me go through hundreds of variations of these natural pain antidotes he'd identified. I was eating all sorts of strange things, taking all sorts of weird supplements, drinking weird teas, you name it. There were days where something would seem to be working and my pain wouldn't be quite as bad. And when that happened, he'd record what foods and supplements I'd taken the day before in extremely detailed fashion. Usually, though, even if my pain was a little less severe for a day or two, it would soon come back, which meant we needed to keep pushing forward. And besides, Kleimar wasn't looking for something that made severe chronic pain a little more manageable. He was looking for something that would make it go away entirely and stay banished from my body forever. And finally, on September 18th, it happened. The night before, after trying what was probably our 140th or so combination of pain-blocking foods and supplements, I'd gone to bed remarking that my pain didn't seem to be so severe. And I was amazed when, upon waking up the following morning, I realized I'd slept through the entire night without once being awoken by back or joint aches. As I lay there in bed, I also realized that I was feeling a lot better than I normally did. There was still some minor aching, but nothing like what I'd usually experienced. Now, of course, we'd seen this before, me having a moment of temporary relief, so I was incredibly cautious with my optimism. But I will say it was damn nice to go through an entire day without much pain. And it was much nicer still when I woke up the following day with even less soreness and aching in my body. My excitement really started to grow when by the 7th day, I was experiencing virtually zero body pain at all. And when by the 14th day, my pain was 100% non-existent. It was incredible. From that point on, I started waking up every morning feeling great, and still feeling just as great when I went to bed each night. And in between waking and sleeping, it was as if somebody had finally given me back my freedom after more than 40 years of being a slave to my pain. I drove out to the shopping center and got groceries. I went to a family dinner at my daughter and son-in-law's house and sat at the dining room table for 3 hours straight without experiencing a moment of discomfort. I even went to the gym and ran on the treadmill for a full 45 minutes, and the pain just wasn't there anymore. It's honestly hard to explain how liberating this was. I mean, just imagine it. Having the debilitating pain you've suffered from for years of your life, that's affected your work, your ability to exercise, even your time spent with family, completely and totally disappear in a few short weeks. The feeling is indescribable, and I babbled on like a baby as I kept tearfully thanking Clymar again and again for what he'd done. The scientist was thrilled for me, but he also said his work wasn't finished yet. Because even though it appeared as if we discovered a simple combination of food and supplements that addressed each of those evil transmitters in the brain, the ones that are amplifying your pain levels even when you're just lying in bed and not doing any physical activities whatsoever. He was a scientist, and he needed to test this discovery in a much larger population before he'd openly admit that he'd found a legitimate and fully effective cure for chronic pain. And so, with my help, we took the specific pain elimination protocol he discovered and put it into a simple-to-follow guide. In it, we explained exactly how pain really works, and we wrote out which neurotransmitters in the brain were causing it to amplify your pain to unbearable levels. Then, we listed out each of the antidotes to these evil transmitters, the different organic chemicals and compounds that would naturally combat them, and turn the pain volume in your brain back down to normal levels. Finally, we created a comprehensive list of the foods, supplements, oils, extracts, and other elements that contained each of these pain-fighting chemicals. Initially, we tried out some pretty weird stuff, but ultimately we discovered that there were dozens of pretty common items that were completely natural, and that could be bought at the local grocery store or GNC for a total of $20 extra, which meant it would be possible for anyone to use this method for themselves, even if Kevin wasn't there in person to work with them. Then we put out ads both online and in local papers, asking for volunteers to test this method, and the response we got was overwhelming. Literally thousands of people contacted us to share their stories, to tell us about the horrible pain they'd been suffering for decades, and to beg to be accepted into the pilot program. It's also worth noting that the folks who emailed or called us suffered from a huge variety of pain issues, from lower back pain to arthritis, migraines, to irritable bowel syndrome, chest pains, to bad hips and knees, and everything in between. And after the people we accepted had signed the proper non-disclosure agreement saying they wouldn't share the pain elimination method with anyone else unless they had our permission, we emailed them an electronic version of the guide we created and waited for their feedback. The results were staggering. Out of the 1,219 people who initially received this chronic pain cure, within 7 days, 63% of them reported being totally pain-free. Within 14 days, 91% of them reported being totally pain-free. And within 21 days, virtually all people who had tried this method reported being completely pain-free. The other 10% of participants never responded to our emails or calls, which is why we can't include them in the data. What Kevin Clymar had created, with my tiny part of help, was working. And in a 6-month follow-up shows virtually all of them said that they still weren't experiencing any pain at all. Those are pretty amazing results, but they really shouldn't come as a total shock when you think about it. After all, science has already shown that 1. Your brain dictates whether or not you feel any physical sensations. 2. People with chronic pain have an overdose of certain neurotransmitters and chemicals, which together put your brain out of whack and amplify the sensation of pain you experience to extremely high levels, even when you're just sitting on the couch. 3. And that there are natural antidotes, which, when applied in the correct way, naturally either eliminate those evil transmitters or reduce them back to normal and healthy levels. So it only made sense that if you could get the right combination of antidotes into your body, the pain would go away, which is exactly what happened. But as we were about to discover, sharing this scientific breakthrough with the world would prove more difficult than we thought. The editors of both the academic and public science journals that Clymar approached wouldn't touch his findings with a 10-foot pole. The problem, we were told again and again, was that if Clymar's natural pain elimination treatment were to reach the general public, it would literally scoop out hundreds of billions of dollars from the pockets of both the major pharmaceutical companies and the healthcare industry at large. And as virtually every university medical department, every scientific or medical journal, and every research institution in America was utterly dependent upon Big Pharma and the healthcare conglomerates for their funding, the editors said that they just simply couldn't risk publishing the total pain elimination method that Clymar had created, or it could literally ruin them. Well, of course, hearing this made Kevin mad, and it made me even madder. Who the hell do these gatekeepers in their ivory towers think they were? What right did they have to prevent the healing of 100 million Americans? I thought back to my daughter's wedding night and the horrible sight of her sobbing as I lay helplessly on the dance floor. I thought about the debilitating agonizing and seemingly uncontrollable pain that I've been forced to live with for nearly my entire life. And I thought about all of the other Americans out there who were just like me, honest and fundamentally good people who had been forced to live like a slave to their own body, constantly tortured, never free, always hoping for just one pain-free day. There was just no way in good conscience that I could not let Klymar's pain elimination breakthrough go unknown. Which is why, starting in late December of that year, I began relentlessly lobbying him to let me publish his guide online. At first, the scientist was hesitant. This man had gained the respect and recognition of scientific and medical colleagues across the world over the course of several decades. And he knew that going behind their back to make what he discovered available to the public would cost him dearly. But the more I begged, the more I reminded him of how drastically he changed both my life and the nearly 1,300 other test subjects after me, the more I pointed out that he could literally set people free with this, change their lives, let them live the next 10, 20, even 30 years completely pain-free, never waking up in the middle of the night with body aches or feeling soreness in their limbs when they walked, or eventually needing to use a wheelchair to get around. Klymar finally agreed that Truly did have a moral duty to get this method out to every single American who is suffering or imprisoned by pain and discomfort. And so over the next month, we worked tirelessly to build this website, create this presentation, and make his simple but 100% effective pain elimination guide available to every single American who wanted it. We decided to call Klymar's treatment protocol the Erase Chronic Pain Program, because when you use it, you will turn off the amplifier in your brain and rapidly restore those neurotransmitters to normal levels. The Erase Chronic Pain Program is only available on this website that you're on right now, and inside you'll get a complete how-to guide for permanently curing even the worst cases of chronic pain. You'll be shown what those evil pain transmitters are, the ones that are putting your brain out of whack and flooding it with pain signals. And you'll be given a comprehensive list of different foods and supplements, which, when combined in the specific way we'll share with you inside, immediately rid your brain of the havoc those pain transmitters create. Every single food or supplement you'll find inside the Erase Chronic Pain Program is 100% natural and can be purchased at your local grocery store for less than $20. Yet they are extremely effective when combined in the specific manner you're given inside the guide. Remember, the key to why this works is that for each evil neurotransmitter in your brain, there are other natural organic chemicals that, when introduced into your body, immediately break down those pain-causing agents and banish them from your body. That's really what makes Klymar's discovery so amazing. Scientific study after scientific study has already shown that the different chemical compounds we've included inside this guide counteract these biological pain amplifiers. But until now, no one had ever figured out how to combine these compounds all at once, thereby bringing your brain back into balance. The Erase Chronic Pain Program gives you explicit and easy-to-follow, step-by-step directions for becoming pain-free in as little as 7 days. Just like the 118,884 other Americans just like you who have already used this. People like Tara Lockwood of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, who writes, "Hey Eric, I'm just sending a quick note here to thank you and Klymar for your incredible work with the Erase Chronic Pain Program. For decades, I've been suffering from the worst, most debilitating migraines. They made it impossible for me to go outside, to read, or to enjoy time with my family. I'd seen so many specialists, tried so many medications, but simply nothing had worked. And yet, despite all of this, within 14 days of following the step-by-step guide you included inside, those migraines were completely gone. It's incredible. I used to get those headaches every single day, but now I haven't had one in more than 8 months. Thanks." And Cameron Smith of Chicago, Illinois, who says, "I'd been a sufferer of what was labeled fibromyalgia for 27 years. I hated that term because all it really meant was that I had ongoing body pain, and doctors didn't know why. I had heard everything, that the pain was something I was just making up to recommendations that I have strange operational procedures on parts of my body that weren't even aching. The situation was desperate, and I really didn't know what else to turn. That's when my wife came across your website and shared your video with me. I thought it was baloney, if I'm being honest, but what other options did I have? I decided to go ahead and use the Erase Chronic Pain Program for myself, and it was the best decision I've ever made. It took all of 10 days for me to be pain-free, and I've never once looked back since. Thank you so much. You have given me my life back." Now, the stories from Cameron and Tara are inspiring, but they are also incredibly common. This pain elimination method works, period, and it will transform your life. Which is why I'll cut right to the chase and tell you how you can start using the Erase Chronic Pain Program for yourself right now. You see, initially, Kevin and I began selling his pain cure through this website for the price of $399. That might sound like a lot, but more than 68,250 people happily paid that amount in the first 2 weeks that we made available. I guess they figured that $399 was still less than they'd pay for just 1 or 2 visits with a pain management specialist. The same specialist they'd already been stuck seeing again and again for decades, without any results. And they figured that $399 was still a lot less than the $600 for a year's worth of prescription painkillers. Liver-destroying pills that not only don't bring permanent relief, but that are also highly addictive and so powerful they turn you into a stumbling, drooling zombie. Plus, I guess they figured that beyond any amount of money, $399 was a small price to pay for finally being happy again. For getting their lives back, so that they could go on road trips with their families, or shoot hoops out in the driveway with their children or grandchildren, or even make love to their spouses without being an agonizing misery. Because really, when you think about it, there's just no way you can put a price on being totally pain-free, or waking up each morning unafraid of suffering, and ready to seize the day and enjoy every single moment of it. I was in your shoes. I experienced the endless days of pain, how it would come in waves or seemingly at random, or even surface at different places in my body, leaving both me and my doctor incredibly confused. I know exactly how life-changing the Erase Chronic Pain program can be, and how much it will change your life, which is why I just don't feel good about us charging $399 for this highly effective, rapid-acting, and permanent pain elimination method anymore. And why Climar and I aren't going to ask you to pay anywhere near the $399 that more than 68,000 other Americans already invested for this treatment protocol, or $299, or $199, or even $99, which is a steal. Instead, if you act right now by pushing that Add to Order button you see below this video, and only if there's still time and this website is still online, which might not be for long as I'll explain in a moment, you can get the entire Erase Chronic Pain program, the food and supplement lists, the daily portion guides, and the easy-to-follow direction for combining each item so they can go to work in your body and destroy those evil pain transmitters in your brain forever, for the small, one-time investment of $39. To get started, simply click the Add to Order button that's underneath this video. Once you've clicked that button, you'll be taken to our secure checkout page, which looks like this, where you just need to enter your basic information. Then, on the very next page, you'll get access to the special Patients-Only area of this website that Climar and I have created. And inside that Patients-Only area, you'll have instant access to the entire Erase Chronic Pain program, the food lists, the combination instructions, the daily directions, everything. You'll be able to view all of materials directly on your computer, laptop, or smartphone, download them, or even print them out and share them with your loved ones. Remember, the Erase Chronic Pain program is based on an overwhelmingly body of scientific research, along with the incredible results in the 1,200 initial test subjects who tried it, and the 118,884 who have since then used it to conquer even the worst cases of chronic pain within 21 days.